So today we're learning about parallel and perpendicular lines. So go ahead and write this down right now. Parallel lines. These are two lines, or it could be more lines, that do not intersect. So that means that they don't cross, they don't touch. And the special thing about this when you look at the equation is one, they have the same slope, and two, they have different y-intercepts. Perpendicular lines. These are two lines that intersect at a right angle. So when they cross, they make a right angle. And the way that we can tell whether the lines are perpendicular is by looking at their slopes and if they're opposite reciprocals. Now I put an example of what opposite reciprocal means. That means they have different signs. So one's negative, one's positive, and then you just flip them. So for example, we have -1/2, and then the other slope is just 2 because -1/2 was negative, so we made 2 positive, and then we took 1/2 and we flipped it. So you could think 2 or 2/1, which we already know is just 2. Alright, let's try some examples now. So number 1, it says directions. Find the slope of each line. So for number 1, we're trying to find a slope of a line that's parallel. And to remind you guys, parallel lines mean the same slope. So this one's pretty easy. The slope would be equal to 1/2. Number 2, we're trying to find a line that's perpendicular. So therefore it needs to be opposite reciprocal slope. So it needs to have an opposite sign and you want to flip the fraction. So looking at this one, m is equal to -3/4, so we want to make it positive. And then we're going to flip the fraction. So instead of 3/4, it's going to be 4/3. Right now I want you guys to try number 3 and 4 on your own, so pause the video and start up when you're done. Number 3, we're trying to find the slope of a line that's parallel, so this would be the same slope. So it would be -5/8. And then for number 4, slope of a line that's perpendicular, we have a slope of 2, so we want it to be opposite reciprocal, so we want opposite sign, which would be negative, and then we want to flip the fraction. So instead of 2/1, we're going to flip it so it's 1/2. Alright, let's try number 5 now. It says, directions. Write an equation of a line that is parallel or perpendicular to another line. So number 5 says, what is an equation of a line parallel to y equals -3x minus 5 and contains the point -1, 8. So for this one, we're looking for a line that's parallel. So we want the slope to be the same. If we look right in front of the x, we have a slope of -3, so I'm going to write that down. And now we want to write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form. Remember, this is y equals mx plus b. So we've done this exact same thing before. First, we're going to look at our y-coordinate of our point, and that's 8. So I'm going to put 8 is equal to our slope, which we just found, which is -3, times our x value from our point, which is -1, and then plus b. That's what we're looking for right now. Now we're just going to solve this. -3 times -1 is a +3. So 3 plus b is equal to 8. Subtract 3 from both sides, and we get b is equal to 5. Our last step now is to write our equation. So we're going to write y is equal to our slope, which is -3, x plus our b value, which we just found, which is 5. All right. Let's try the next problem, number 6. Okay. Number 6 says, was an equation of a line perpendicular to y equals 1/5 x plus 2 and contains the point 15, -4. So our first step is to find a slope that's perpendicular to 1/5. So what we want to do is take the opposite reciprocal slope, so that would be opposite sign, which would be negative, and then flip the fraction, which would be 5/1, which just reduces to 5. And then we're going to write our equation of a line in y equals mx plus b form. And again, we're going to plug in the point to try and find out what our b value is. So our y coordinate is -4. So -4 is equal to our slope that we just found. You want to use the -5, not 1/5. So -5 times our x coordinate, which is 15, and then plus b. Alright, let's simplify this now. -5 times 15 is going to be -75 plus b, and that's all equal to -4. Now we're going to add 75 to both sides, and we get b is equal to -4 plus 75, which is 71. Now we're finally going to write our equation. So we're going to write y equals our slope, which is -5, x, and then plus 71. Alright, right now I want you guys to try the same thing for number 7 and 8, so pause the video and then start it when you're finished. Alright, let's look at the next problem, number 7. It says, what is an equation of a line parallel to y equals -x minus 7 and contains the point -5, 3. So first we're going to find the slope of a line that's parallel to it. So remember that -x really means -1. So for parallel lines we find the same slope. So m is equal to -1. And we're going to plug it into our equation, y equals mx plus b. So our y coordinate here is 3. So we're going to write 3 is equal to, our slope comes next, which is -1, x, which is -5, and then plus b, that's what we're solving for. So -1 times a -5 is a +5 plus b, and that's all equal to 3. Subtract 5 from both sides, and we get b is equal to a -2, and then we write our equation. So it's going to be y is equal to a -1x, or you could have just written -x minus 2. Alright, let's look at number 8 now. It says, what is an equation of a line perpendicular to y equals -3x minus 5 and contains the point -1, 8? So first we have to find a slope of a line that's perpendicular, so it's opposite reciprocal, so opposite sign, which would be positive. And then flip that 3/1 so that it's 1/3. And then we're going to put in y equals mx plus b form. Alright, so our y coordinate, this is going to be 8. equals our slope, which is 1/3, and then x, which is -1, plus b. 1/3 times -1 is just -1/3, plus b is equal to 8. Now we're going to add 1/3 to both sides. And I'm going to change this to an improper fraction. So that's going to look like 25/4 is going to be our b value. And then we're going to write our equation, which would be y is equal to 1/3 x, and then plus 25/4. Or you could have written that as a decimal if you wanted, but I like to leave it as a fraction. Alright, let's look at the next problem. It says, classify each line as parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So here we have two lines. It says 5y equals -3x plus 1, and -3x minus 5y is equal to 2. Okay, so in order to find out whether a line is parallel or perpendicular, what you have to do is you have to figure out what the slope is. But in order to find the slope, we have to have the equation looking like this: y equals mx plus b. And right now, if you look at that equation, there should not be a number in front of that y, but there is right now. So my question to you guys right now would be, how do we get rid of that 5 in front of that y? We need to divide by 5. So when you divide an equation like this by 5, you have to divide every little piece of it by 5. So now it's going to look like this. I divide everything by 5, and we get y is equal to -3/5 x plus 1/5. So you can just leave that as a fraction. You don't have to worry about putting it in your calculator and finding a decimal. Alright, let's look at equation number 2 now. This one we have to do a little bit more work. In order for us to get to look like y equals mx plus b, we're going to have to get rid of that -3x and move it over to the other side so that y is by itself. So I'm going to add 3x to both sides. Can you combine 2 plus 3x? No, you cannot. They are going to stay separate. So this is going to cancel, and we're going to have -5y is equal to, we're going to write our x first and then our number after it, so it looks like y equals mx plus b. So we have 3x and then plus 2, because that 2 was positive up at the top. Our last step now is to get that y completely by itself. So we're going to divide every little thing by -5, everything. So we're going to get y equals -3/5 x minus 2/5. So now we're going to look back at both of our equations, and we're going to write down the slope for both of them. So the slope for the first equation was -3/5, and the slope for the second equation is -3/5. I noticed that some people were getting confused before because the negative was on the top of the fraction or the negative was on the bottom of the fraction. It doesn't matter where the negative's at. That negative sign is going to make that whole number negative, so it doesn't matter whether the negative goes with the top number or the bottom number. So looking at their slopes, they both have the same slope, so therefore this answer is going to be parallel. Alright, what we're going to do now is we are going to do number 10 together, and then I'm going to let you guys try number 11 on your own. So let's look at number 10. Okay, so we have our first equation. It's y equals negative 4x plus 1. Let's look for the slope. Is the y all by itself on one side of the equation? Yes, it is. So all we have to do now is look at the number in front of our x, which is negative 4. So our slope here is negative 4. Now let's look at the next equation. Do we have y all by itself, or do we have something attached to it? It looks like we have that negative 4 attached to the y. So we're going to have to get rid of that. So we are going to divide everything by negative 4 again. So I'm going to divide everything by negative 4. And this is going to cancel, and we're going to get y is equal to, I'm going to write it like this, negative 1/4 x, and then a negative 2 divided by a negative 4. If we could simplify that, negative divided by a negative is going to be a positive. And then to simplify 2/4, that's going to be 1/2. So now let's look at our slopes. We have m is equal to negative 4, and we have, for our other equation, we have m is equal to negative 1/4. So are these lines parallel? No, they're not parallel. They don't have the same slope. Are they perpendicular? No, they're not perpendicular either, because they both have a negative slope. So therefore, our answer here is going to be neither. They're not parallel or perpendicular, so that just means these two lines cross. Alright, right now go ahead and pause the video and try the last problem, number 11. Alright, looking at number 11, we have one equation. It says 4y is equal to negative 5x plus 12. Alright, do we have the y all by itself yet? Or do we need to get rid of something? It looks like we have the 4 attached to the y. We need to get rid of that in order to find our slope. Our slope right now would not be negative 5. That would be wrong. So we have to divide everything by 4. And we're going to rewrite this. Y is equal to negative 5 x. And then 12 divided by 4 is a positive 3. Let's look at our next equation. Is the y by itself? Yes, it is. So right away we can find our slope. And our slope here is 4/5. Looking at our slope from the first equation, we have negative 5/4. So these are not parallel because they are not the same slope. Let's look at perpendicular now. Does one of them have a negative sign and the other one have a positive sign? Yes. And is one fraction a flip of the other fraction? Yes, it is. Therefore, these are perpendicular. Alright, right now for the rest of the class period, if you guys have time, you guys need to work on your homework. So you have problems 1 through 11. So get started right now, and I'll see you tomorrow.